In the dark, cold, near-frozen winters of Western Europe, the year 1944 could have ended with a grim note as Germans made their last push to conquer Belgium and the Netherlands and kick Allied armies out of the European mainland. But right before Christmas, a miracle happened when a young 19-year-old boy, fresh into the army, decided to stand up and say no, and stood up to fight alone, for he had decided that Germans shall not pass the river. This young boy was Francis Sherman Currey, a slim boy from New York who could have been the inspiration for Captain America if the comic superhero didn't predate him. Welcome to Nutty History, and today we are unraveling the scary, untold story from the World War II days of Francis Sherman Currey that the history books didn't tell us. Mayhem at Malmody. The Battle of the Bulge holds an important place in the chronicles of the Second World War. The month-long conflict in the Ardennes region of the Western Front was a decisive factor in ending the Nazi regime. The battle began when 29-year-old SS Lieutenant Colonel Joachim Peiper, who was the commander of a regiment of the 1st SS Panzer Division of the Leibstandarte SS. This battalion was infamous as the Blowtorch Battalion. They had earned this name by blazing everything that came their way in Russia. The brutality of the Blowtorch Battalion wasn't only limited to the enemy ranks, they were also responsible for the annihilation of the majority of the civilian population of 2 separate villages. So war crimes were not a shy subject for them. In the last German offensive of World War II, Peiper spotted a truck convoy of Battery B of the 285th Field Artillery Observation Battalion on December 17, 1944. This happened southeast of Malmody, and he ordered the panzer tanks to open fire. Within seconds, the lead vehicles of the convoy were destroyed, and the entire party came to a halt, but the tanks didn't stop firing. The outgunned Americans were forced to abandon their vehicles and found themselves surrounded. With no escape in sight, the majority of terrified soldiers surrendered as Germans quickly overtook the thin U.S. lines, while a few managed to escape. Herded to a nearby field, captured U.S. soldiers soon found themselves at Peiper's mercy, but he had nothing to offer. The terrified group of POWs heard one of the tank commanders order open fire in German, while English-speaking SS were asking around if any of them were injured. Those who responded were terminated on the spot. A total of 81 Americans were executed in what could be considered the worst war crime against the U.S. troops during World War II in Europe. The SS troops moved on, leaving nearly 40 survivors to scramble their way to a U.S. Army colonel stationed in Malmedy and report the gruesome incident. Soon, the word also reached General Eisenhower. The U.S. troops were now more determined than ever to hold the line and give the Germans no quarter. But the situation was bleak. Germans had already overrun the anti-tank positions. A week later, in what became known as the Malmody Mayhem, the New York Times headline read, "Doughboy throws arsenal at Nazis." A lanky 19-year-old private had pulled an extraordinary feat to repulse an onslaught by the 1st SS Panzer Division a few miles from where the Malmody Mayhem had happened. A true American hero. Orphaned at the age of 12, Francis Doughboy Currey enlisted in the U.S. Army at the age of 17 and was assigned as a replacement infantryman to the battle-hardened 30th Infantry Division in September 1944. The 30th Infantry Division was stationed in the Netherlands during that time, and Currey arrived there after receiving extensive training on infantry weapons of all sorts. Currey was performing guard duties at a bridge crossing in Malmedy on the morning of December 21, 1944, when out of nowhere, German artillery began firing at their base. Private Currey and other infantrymen retreated in foxholes, backing up American anti-tank troops. The fighting was fierce, yet Currey was smart enough to figure out that the artillery barrage was cover for an enemy infantry assault. Peeking from the cover, Currey noticed the barrel of a German tank coming out of a corner down the road when the smoke of the artillery cleared. The German tank commander was standing up in the turret of his tank to survey the area. As soon as Currey noticed it, he knew the commander was pretty much a sitting duck for him, and the young boy let loose with a burst from his bar. The tank in response continued down the road, so Currey had to retreat down the bridge and seek cover in a nearby barn where Currey's regiment had a bazooka stored. With the help of another soldier, Currey loaded the bazooka and then let the oncoming German tank have it. The bazooka round struck the tank at the base of the turret, thereby jamming and rendering it ineffective. This was enough to make the German tank retreat and allow Currey to return to the bridge. But this was just the beginning, as Currey soon observed 3 more German tanks around the corner and heading for the bridge. This was Currey's Rambo moment. He eyed a knocked-out anti-tank position nearby, and the slender boy ran through furious German fire to locate anti-tank grenades. Then, all by himself, he lobbed the grenades to take down all 3 German tanks, one by one. The German tank crews were forced to abandon their vehicles and retreat, while Currey stood his ground through relentless rifles and machine guns firing from the enemy lines. The Germans were determined to cross the river and take Malmody, but Currey was having none of it. While taking cover from yet another burst of rifle rounds, he noticed a machine gun crew just opposite of his position was knocked out. The entire crew either wounded or killed by enemy fire. Despite knowing how dangerous it was as torrents of rounds were firing from all directions, Currey crawled to aid the wounded machine gunners' evacuation across the road. He then took charge and provided cover fire as the 5 wounded men escaped to safety. Currey kept the cover fire going until the position became untenable due to heavy enemy fire. By then, Currey had not only put a heavy dent in German advances, but also eliminated many German infantrymen. Post-Battle of the Bulge. For his extreme example of bravery, Currey became a squad leader and was awarded the Silver Award for gallantry in action at his regiment's command post. As a leader, Currey had a 48-member platoon under his command, but sadly, the young man found it very difficult to fit into the role. Since most of these men were the replacement of the squad that he joined in 1944, they didn't share the emotions attached to the battles they didn't fight together. The toll of casualties was so high that only 4 or 5 soldiers from the original platoon roster were still with him. During the month of March 1945, Currey's company commander recommended his name for the Medal of Honor, citing his bravery during the German attacks on December 21, 1944. Currey was presented with the award on July 27, 1945 by the 30th Infantry Division Commander, Major General Leland Hobbs, near Reims, France. The official award ceremony, however, was performed on August 17, 1945, after the fall of Berlin. Despite being a well-decorated Army man, Francis Sherman Currey was a humble person. He got to meet Eisenhower, Bradley, and President Truman after the war. Currey mentioned that Ike was quite proud of him and opined that Currey's action in Malmody to stop the German advance during the Battle of the Bulge single-handedly shortened the war by 6 weeks or perhaps more. For a single private, this was a monumental impact on the Second World War. Francis S. Currey further received his 3rd Purple Heart for being shot in Bavaria while he was disarming German soldiers. His total tally of awards was Medal of Honor, Silver Star, Bronze Star Medal, 3 Purple Hearts, as well as an Order of Leopold from the Belgian military. After being relieved from his active duty, Currey joined the Veteran Affairs Medical Center in Albany, New York in 1950 as a counselor. After retiring from there, he spent his life running a landscaping business and also worked at a hotel, booking conventions in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina until 2002. The brave hero who pulled a Hollywood action movie-like odds of one man against an army left the world on October 8, 2019 in New York. Back to that fateful battle with the Germans, miraculously, Currey had only endured a minor wound, and to escape, he jumped on a Jeep with other squad members as they were forced to drive at high speed in darkness. Guided by only dim headlamps, the Jeep was trying to get away as far as possible from the Germans, with young Currey riding shotgun. His finger was on the trigger the whole ride, in case they got spotted by the enemy and have to engage. They ran into a roadblock that fortunately belonged to another American regiment. But at first, the GIs were suspected of being enemy infiltrators. The roadblock guards were wary that Currey and his squad could be English-speaking German troops who were impersonating GIs after getting their hands on American uniforms. It took Currey and his squad the whole night before his fellow men believed them and sent them back to their regiment. Interestingly, Francis Currey's legacy was honored in many ways, one of which was to become the first Medal of Honor recipient to be portrayed as a G.I. Joe action figure. We hope you enjoyed the story of one of the many unsung national heroes. If you want us to cover more stories like this, tell us in the comments. And as always, thanks for watching Nutty History. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.